My name is Claire, and I am 31 years old. 3 years ago, I gave up a job I loved, a junior associate position at a marketing firm in Austin, to move back into my childhood home in Denton, Texas, and take care of my mother full-time. I want to be clear about something before I tell you what happened at Thanksgiving dinner last November. I did not do it out of obligation. I did it out of love. My mother, Ruth, had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's, and while she was still sharp and capable and absolutely furious at the disease trying to slow her down, the practical reality of her daily life had become too much to manage alone. My father had passed 4 years earlier from a heart attack, quietly and without warning, the way men of his generation often go, here one morning, gone by afternoon. After that, my mother ran the house herself, paid every bill, kept the garden, drove to her book club every Thursday. She was not a woman who needed rescuing, but Parkinson's changed the math. The tremors made cooking dangerous. The fatigue made the stairs a risk. The medication schedule alone required the kind of attention that a 68-year-old woman living by herself simply should not have to manage solo. So I came home. I set up a small freelance client list to keep income trickling in. I converted the downstairs den into my bedroom so my mother could stay in her room upstairs, and I learned more about dopamine pathways and physical therapy exercises and pill organizers than I ever expected to know by age 29. My older brother Daniel visited twice in the first year. My older sister Brenda called on Sundays. Sometimes. My mother's sister, my Aunt Gloria, sent a fruit basket at Christmas. The house itself, a 4-bedroom colonial on Maple Creek Drive that my parents had bought in 1988, was fully paid off. My father had made sure of that before he died. It was not a mansion, but it sat on 1/3 of an acre with a big backyard maple tree my mother had planted the year I was born, and in a neighborhood where values had climbed steadily. It was worth somewhere between $400,000 and $450,000. I did not think about that number very often. It was my mother's house. It was my childhood home. It was the place where my mother kept my father's reading chair in the corner of the living room because she said the room felt wrong without it. I thought about Daniel even less than I thought about that number. My brother was 40 years old, lived in a nice suburb outside of Dallas with his wife Karen and their 2 teenage sons, and worked in commercial real estate. He was not a bad person in the dramatic sense of the word. He was the kind of person who was good at forgetting things that were inconvenient to remember, like the fact that his sister had paused her entire life to care for their mother, or that their mother had strong opinions about her own future. Karen was the sharper edge of the two. She had opinions about the house, opinions about what was practical, and a particular smile she used when she was about to say something she had clearly rehearsed. They arrived the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I had spent 2 days cleaning, prepping the turkey brine, making sure the downstairs bathroom had fresh towels and that the pull-out couch in the guest room was made up properly. My mother was having a decent week. Her hands were steadier than usual, and she had insisted on making her cornbread stuffing herself, standing at the kitchen counter with her walker beside her like a co-pilot she resented but tolerated. I stood nearby, not helping unless she asked, because she had told me plainly that the worst thing I could do was hover. Daniel hugged me at the door and said I looked tired. Karen said the house smelled wonderful. They brought wine and a store-bought pie. Their sons, Tyler and Cody, were on their phones before their bags hit the floor. My mother came out of the kitchen slowly, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and her face when she saw Daniel was the kind of face that reminds you why people have children in the first place. Open and soft and decades younger than her age. He hugged her for a long time. I told myself that this was going to be a good Thanksgiving. Thursday started well. The kitchen was warm and the food smelled the way holidays are supposed to smell, and my mother held court from her chair at the head of the table, telling a story about the Thanksgiving she and my father got lost driving to his parents' house in Tulsa and ended up eating gas station sandwiches in a parking lot in Oklahoma City and laughing until they cried. Tyler looked up from his phone long enough to smile at that one. It was after dinner, after the dishes had been cleared and the pie had been cut, that Daniel said he wanted to talk about something. He said it the way people say things they have been planning to say for a long time, but want to pretend are spontaneous. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment and then said, "Mom, Karen and I have been talking, and we really think it's time we had a serious conversation about this house." My mother set down her fork. We've done some research, Karen said, and she slid a folded piece of paper across the table like a contract closing. I did not reach for it. My mother did not reach for it. The market in Denton right now is incredible. Houses in this neighborhood are moving in under 2 weeks. If you listed in the spring, you could walk away with more money than you'd ever need for a really nice memory care facility, and there'd still be plenty left for the estate. I heard the words memory care facility and felt something go very cold in my chest. My mother said, I don't have memory problems, Karen. Not yet, Daniel said, and his voice was gentle in the way that made it worse. But the Parkinson's is progressive, Mom. We've talked to a doctor. Which doctor? I said. He looked at me like he had forgotten I was sitting there. A specialist we consulted, independently. You consulted a specialist about our mother without telling either of us? Claire. He said my name with that particular older sibling weight, the tone that meant calm down, you're embarrassing yourself. We're trying to be proactive. This house is going to become a liability. The stairs, the maintenance, the property taxes. It's a lot for Mom to manage, and it's a lot for you to keep up with. If we sell now while the market is strong, Mom is taken care of, you get your life back. I didn't lose my life, I said. You quit your job, Karen said pleasantly. I do freelance work. Claire. Daniel again. Be realistic, you've been here 3 years, that's incredibly generous. But this isn't sustainable and Mom deserves professional care. My mother had been quiet through this exchange. She had her hands flat on the table in front of her and she was looking at Daniel with an expression I had not seen on her face since the time he backed her car into the mailbox at age 16 and tried to blame the wind. I am 68 years old, she said. I have a neurological condition that my doctors and I are managing. I take 4 medications, I go to physical therapy twice a week, and last month I scored 29 out of 30 on my cognitive assessment. I am not confused, I am not incompetent, and I am not moving into a facility. This is my house. Your father and I paid for this house. I will decide what happens to it. Mom, we have power of attorney, Daniel said. The room went quiet. What? I said. He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. We filed the paperwork in September. We did it to protect her, Claire. In case something happens. It means Karen and I can make financial and medical decisions on her behalf if she becomes unable to. She is sitting right in front of you, I said. And she just told you she scored 29 out of 30 on a cognitive test. Power of attorney doesn't activate unless Mom is declared incompetent, Karen said smoothly. Which she isn't. We're just being prepared. Then why are you telling her what's going to happen to her house? Karen's smile did not move. We're having a family conversation. You filed legal documents about my mother in secret and didn't tell me. You're not her legal representative, Claire. My mother stood up. She stood up slowly with the particular deliberate steadiness of someone who refuses to let their body make them look weak, and she picked up her glass of water and she looked at Daniel for a long moment. I want you to hear me clearly, she said. I am not selling this house. I am not moving into a facility, and whatever paperwork you filed, I promise you I will be on the phone with my own attorney before the end of this weekend. She set the glass down. Now, does anyone want more pie? I helped her to bed at 9 o'clock. She held my hand at the doorway to her room and said, Don't let them rattle you. I told her I wouldn't. I went back downstairs, cleared the rest of the table, and sat in my father's reading chair in the corner of the living room for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. I had set up the camera 6 weeks earlier. I want to be honest about that. It was not something I did on a whim or in a panic. I had noticed things changing in the months before Thanksgiving. Daniel had started calling my mother more frequently, which I had initially thought was a good sign, until I realized the calls always seemed to happen when I was out of the house. At the pharmacy, at my mother's PT appointments, on my rare afternoons at the coffee shop with my freelance work. My mother mentioned once, offhandedly, that Daniel had asked her to think about updating some paperwork. She had laughed it off. I had not laughed it off. I had not laughed it off. I had also found, tucked behind the cookbooks on the kitchen shelf, a brochure for a memory care facility in Plano. It had not been there before. My mother did not drive anymore. She had not put it there herself. So I bought 3 small cameras, the kind that look like smoke detectors, legally purchased, legally installed in the common areas of my own home, visible if you looked closely, which apparently no one did. I had footage of Daniel's last visit in October, 45 minutes at the kitchen table with a legal pad, going over what he described to my mother as just some planning documents, pointing to lines and asking her to initial. My mother, who was having a difficult pain day and whose hands were shaking, had initialed 3 pages before she asked what she was signing, and Daniel said it was just updates. I had a very good attorney. Her name was Patricia Chen, not to be confused with the Patricia in the original story, and I had contacted her 6 weeks ago, the same week I installed the cameras. She had reviewed the power of attorney filing and told me 2 things. First, that it was legitimate and had been executed correctly, and second, that it could be challenged on the grounds that my mother had not been given adequate independent counsel before signing, and that there was evidence suggesting her signature had been obtained during a period of physical distress without full explanation of the document's contents. She had also told me that filming in common areas of a home in Texas with no expectation of privacy was entirely legal. I had sent her the October footage the week before Thanksgiving. She had called me back in 2 hours. I did not go to bed that Thursday night. I sat in my father's chair and I thought about the table conversation and the words, memory care facility, and the brochure behind the cookbooks. At 7 in the morning I made coffee. At 7:45 Daniel came downstairs in his robe, clearly expecting the house to still be asleep, and stopped short when he saw me sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee and my laptop open. "Morning," he said. "I need to show you something," I said. I turned the laptop to face him. It was the footage from October. Daniel at the kitchen table, the legal pad, my mother's shaking hands initialing pages, and then? The part that had made Patricia Chen call me back in 2 hours. Daniel sliding the last page across the table and saying quietly, "This one just updates the beneficiary on the property. It's just a formality." My mother asking what it meant. Daniel saying, "It means if anything happens to you, the house goes directly to the estate instead of being tied up in probate. It's better for everyone." What that page actually was, according to Patricia Chen, was a quitclaim deed transferring ownership of the house into a family trust, controlled by Daniel. He had not told her that. My brother sat down. His face did something I had not seen it do in a long time. He looked at me and then at the screen and then at me again, and the commercial real estate composure went somewhere else entirely. "Claire, I've already spoken to an attorney," I said. "She filed a motion yesterday to challenge the power of attorney. She also sent a letter to the county recorder's office flagging the quitclaim deed for review, pending a competency hearing that she is reasonably certain will confirm our mother is fully competent. And she sent a separate communication to the Texas State Bar regarding the attorney who notarized the deed, because apparently he did not verify that my mother had independent counsel before signing a document that transferred her property." Daniel was very still. "I also want you to know," I said, "that I have been keeping a log. Every call you made to Mom while I was out of the house. The brochure I found behind the cookbooks in September. The conversation at the October visit. I did not set out to build a case against you. I set out to protect our mother. But here we are." Karen appeared in the doorway in her robe. She looked at Daniel's face and then at me, and something shifted in hers. "What's happening?" she said. "We're leaving," Daniel said. "You can absolutely leave," I said. "But before you do, I want to be clear about a few things." Mom's attorney, her own attorney, who she called last night, who has known her for 15 years, will be here Monday morning. The quitclaim deed is being contested. The power of attorney filing is being reviewed. And our mother, who scored 29 out of 30 on her cognitive assessment last month, has been informed of every document you asked her to sign, and now understands what those documents actually said. I paused. "She would like it if you called her on Christmas, but she asked me to let you know that you should not come to the house without her explicit invitation until this is resolved." Karen said, "This is a misunderstanding. The video is pretty clear," I said. They were packed and out of the driveway by 9:30. Tyler and Cody looked confused and vaguely alarmed, the way teenagers do when they realize adults are not in fact in control of everything. I felt sorry for them in that particular way. You feel sorry for people who are collateral damage in something they didn't choose. My mother came downstairs at 10. I had made her oatmeal with the brown sugar the way she liked it, and I told her what had happened at the kitchen table that morning. She sat with her hands around her mug for a long time. "The October documents," she said finally. "Yes, I thought they were estate updates." She was quiet. "I was having a bad pain day. My hands were shaking and I just wanted it to be over." "I know. He's my son." "I know, Mom." She looked out the kitchen window at the backyard maple, which had lost most of its leaves by November and stood bare and very tall against the gray Texas sky. It was the tree she had planted the year I was born. It looked exactly as permanent as it was. "What happens now?" she said. I told her. Patricia Chen expected the quitclaim deed challenge to succeed. The circumstances of signing raised serious questions, and my mother's competency was not in question. The power of attorney contest would take longer, a few months at minimum. But Patricia was optimistic. In the meantime, my mother retained full legal control of her property and her finances exactly as she always had. The attorney who notarized the deed was facing a bar inquiry. Whether that went anywhere was not in our control. "And Daniel?" she said. "That's up to you," I said. "It's always been up to you." She nodded slowly. She picked up her spoon. "The stuffing came out well," she said. "I was worried the sage was too much, but I think it was right." "It was perfect," I said. She ate her oatmeal and I drank my coffee, and the kitchen was warm and the maple tree stood in the backyard where it had always stood, and for a few minutes neither of us said anything else. The legal process moved faster than Patricia Chen had predicted. By mid-January, the quitclaim deed had been voided by the county recorder following the competency hearing, which my mother passed with a score of 30 out of 30. She informed me afterward with some satisfaction, specifically asked her neurologist to note that in the official record, the power of attorney was formally revoked in February, with documentation that my mother had not been given adequate independent counsel before signing and that the circumstances suggested undue influence. The notarizing attorney received a formal censure from the Texas State Bar and was required to complete an ethics course. Daniel called my mother in January. She told me about it briefly, the way she tells me things she is still processing. He apologized, she listened, she did not say much. She told him to give her time. I do not know what the future of that relationship looks like. I do not think she knows either. Some things that break do not go back together the same way, even when both people eventually want them to. What I know is that the choice is entirely hers, the way it always should have been. The house is still on Maple Creek Drive. The maple tree is still in the backyard. My mother went to her book club last Thursday, and when I picked her up at 9 o'clock, she was still mid-story about a novel they had all agreed was too pleased with itself, and she talked the whole way home. I have been slowly building my freelance client list back up. I am not in any particular hurry. My mother and I have dinner together every night, and sometimes we watch old movies on the couch with a bowl of popcorn she insists on making herself, standing in the kitchen with her walker beside her, taking her time. I used to feel like I had put my life on hold. I do not feel that way anymore. I am not sure I know exactly when that changed. I think it was around the time I realized that protecting someone who cannot protect themselves in a given moment, not because they are weak, but because the people who should have been trustworthy chose not to be, is not a pause. It is a choice. It is actually quite a lot like what my mother did for me for 31 years without once calling it a sacrifice. Her reading chair is still in the corner of the living room. Not my father's anymore. Hers now. The way the house is hers. The way the maple tree is hers. The way the decision about all of it will always, as long as I have anything to say about it, be hers.